Yes, my name is David Eyre, Regional Coordinator Pacific, and in particular overseeing Fiji, Tonga, the Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea. I've been with the PFAN network in the Pacific since August 2021, um, and oversee a network of about 11 advisors spread across the three countries, Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea. Yes, so I guess PFAN in the Pacific uh, uh, would have sort of been started two years before I sort of joined, coming out of COVID. And in 2021, as you know, the world was coming out of COVID, I sort of started in the role, and it's been quite a revelation as to what is out there. Well, so PFAN, while we were just getting started. I think we've sort of made a few inroads in terms of leaving our mark. The point being, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of businesses wanted to go back to business as usual. If businesses had talked about pivoting during COVID, a lot of them also had the chance to sort of reflect on where they want to go, especially around this green space. And we were fortunate enough to find, businesses, a few businesses who are looking to do that. And in that respect, in the short time, we have sort of been involved here in the Pacific. There's been a lot of interest, and I think we've made our impact in the sense that we've piqued a lot of this interest, not just with the businesses on the ground, but the institutes like the banks, the development banks, and some of the development agencies. So much so that we've managed to see one project through to not just financing, but a project that could be a benchmark for the rest of the Pacific. An e-mobility project, and the current project we're working on within Fiji around rural electrification is probably going to be a bit of a yardstick for the rest of the Pacific. So PFAN's association with that is probably going to be remembered in that sense. We would have liked more time to do some of the work we wanted to sort of had started and wanted to finish, and I'm sure in some shape or form we will still be there going forward. The word I've sort of chosen is being accessible as a project preparation facility. What you find is, there is a lot of top-down, especially in the Pacific. There is a lot of top-down. I'm not trying to figure out what the word is. Engagement, and for us, while we weren't just bottom up, the fact that we were talking directly to businesses who wanted to go green and wanted to transition is probably what made us more accessible. So in the short time we had, the accessibility side of things seemed to be the differentiator, and what probably gave us that impact as a project preparation facility. I think the pipeline side of things was only just getting started, and while we see there is probably potential to do that, I guess that the time we had to develop our pipeline, we didn't get an opportunity to do that as well. But having said that, with the businesses that we did pull into the pipeline and pull through the pipeline, the biggest challenge was around finding finance for them. So for the entities that sort of had an idea of what they wanted to do and came to us, the bottleneck was when we had sort of developed their plans, understood where they wanted to go, and they were ready to scale. It was finding the finance. So, any future iterations of PFAN in the Pacific would be, to see where we could pre-source finance for, initiatives that we uh, 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 might be chasing. And we saw that in the institutes that were here. While they understood the concept of going green, understanding green finance was an unknown quantity for them. There was a bit more risk aversion around touching investing in green, and we happy to also say in that period we contributed to educating some of the financial institutes here in the Pacific around it. We're seeing in the Pacific there is a lot of grant money around, but the shift towards involving the private sector seem to become a trend, especially coming out of COVID, and that modality, pretty much fits with what PFAN does as a bread and butter process. We focused on private sector engagement and using private sector to catalyze the green transition. But we could have been seen to have been a bit early in terms of our thinking when we first started. But in the last sort of 2 years, you can see everybody wants to engage the private sector, especially the development partners, and wants to be able to sort of blend development partner grant money with private sector money. Firstly, I'd probably talk about the network that we've built up. It's shown that there is a skill set out there that we can tap into, and a lot of our advisors did not necessarily come from a developmental background. They come from a quite a diverse background, but because they understood how to get things working, I think that's probably going to be one of the the sort of inward-looking impacts I see PFAN has probably done. We've managed to sort of build a network in a short time, but also get our network of advisors understanding how they can sort of help in this green transition. So the network would be one. I guess in terms of the projects that we got involved with, Fiji seems to be a bit of a benchmarking backyard, if you want to call it, for the rest of the Pacific. And the two projects that we currently, one that we're currently working on around the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund is probably going to be a bit of a benchmark project for the rest of the Pacific, with the low penetrations of electricity in the Pacific. Rural electrification and how the approach we're doing will be probably one big project that would you would start to see replicated across the other countries in the Pacific. And e-mobility, the e-mobility project that we supported has already become a bit of a benchmark project from outside Fiji, and I think the project and how it was pushed with our advisor that was assigned to that particular project has probably helped with getting it to that state where it's highly visible and something that has triggered e-mobility conversations in other countries in the Pacific. Probably we had sort of covered that in the previous sort of response, but specific to the question, yeah, e-mobility and rural electrification seem to be the big one that we've sort of have had a few conversations around, and it is making impacts at different levels. The adaptation conversation has always sort of been there, but not been a big part of the projects that we are talking about. But if I have to reference the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund, initially when that fund was being thought out and formed, its intervention was mainly around energy, but that has now been expanded to telecommunications, water, climate resiliency, digital connectivity, and while it may not necessarily be adaptation per se, because it's brought this broader developmental scope to it beyond energy, um, uh, it's involving, initially our partners were the Department of Energy. Now our partners are the Rural and Maritime Ministries, the Ministries of Women and Children. So it's starting to show that, you can't talk about, you know, um, adaptation in isolation. Uh, these interventions are cross-cutting in many ways, and energy can be, the start of a lot of things good for, some of these communities that we are wanting to target, and can sort of open up that sort of conversation to adaptation as well. Our advisory network, like I had alluded to previously, come from a very diverse set of backgrounds. I think what's the flavor or the summary of what they've brought to the network is the ability to sort of bridge gaps in relationships. Uh, in a lot of the conversations we've had with the projects that we've sort of moved through our pipeline, a lot of it is about opening doors to policymakers, opening doors to other partners, opening doors to technical suppliers and skill sets. And when you talk about business in the Pacific, the ease of doing business in the Pacific is very low on the global index. But when you have an advisor like this involved, they can bring that index position up very, very quickly, beyond institutional organizations and frameworks that exist there. And that's probably the biggest contribution to how we've accelerated our programs and projects in the pipeline that we have. Our advisors have been able to get things moving for their projects. I think I'll speak to the project that we're currently working on, the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund, as a private sector partner to the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund Advisory Committee. PFAN's contribution around ensuring that private sector, the private sector voice, the private sector concerns, as in making sure that the fund scales in the right way, has probably been the biggest achievement PFAN has had over this short period we've been here in the Pacific. While it's through one project, it's a project that is going to be easily replicated across the other countries in the Pacific, and the ability to test it is what all these other countries are looking at the moment. And I think that's probably going to give PFAN a lot of longevity in terms of its presence in the Pacific. Yeah. I was quite surprised and pleasantly surprised in the process around sharing experiences from other parts of the network, meaning the other regions. Understanding how businesses in Pakistan or in Thailand operate, and exposing our pipeline projects to that helped these projects understand that they're no different. The struggles they're going through are no different. They might be unique in a setting around Asia, but the similarities are there. but it also exposed our group of projects to the innovative practices that these companies were going through. So the pitch deck process was one unique sort of practice that I'd sort of never seen in a practical sense before, and that is a trump card for for REAP to sort of carry on doing it. I think if you can start to share stories, both success stories and not so successful stories, the learning curve is a lot faster. I guess it's something I had sort of alluded to earlier. If PFAN has partnerships with financing facilities that might be looking at promoting e-mobility, for example, rural electrification. These financing facilities, if these financing facilities are looking for a pipeline, those are things that can keep people interested. What that does is help keep them engaged in the PFAN sort of periphery and space, rather than getting distracted by a lot of this other activity that's going on around us. Um, so if we had the the downstream facility that could finance a project, at least once a project comes into our pipeline, they can understand that there's money to be accessed downstream. That'll keep them engaged. So I think that could be one of um, the recommendations that we could have for the future versions of PFAN and or REAP.